Hello, ladies, gentlemen, and non binary friends. If it's your first time here, welcome. And if it's not, welcome back to Actors with Issues with me, your host, Juan Ayala, bringing you another quick and casual chat with a delightful actor from the small screen, the big screen, or the Broadway stage. You've seen today's guest in hit comedies like Young Sheldon, The Good Place, and most recently as Nigel Chesham in CBS series Ghosts. It's John Hartman. John, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Juan. I'm pleased to be here.
So before we get started, we always get things rolling with a quick game called Getting to Know You. It's a rapid fire round of questions. Just throw a couple your way, and we always start with an easy one: coffee or tea,
Coffee.
film or television,
It's it's film for me.
drama or comedy,
Comedy.
hero or villain,
Oh, villain.
improv or sketch comedy.
Improv.
What was your first non-acting job?
I worked at a local pharmacy, not a brand one, like a mom and pop pharmacy, and I ran deliveries for them. So like I dropped off medicine at old people's homes mostly.
What actor has had the biggest influence on you?
I'm gonna say Bill Murray.
What role did you have the most fun playing?
I mean, recency bias aside, it's probably Nigel.
What is the last show that you binge watched?
Severance on
Oh,
Apple
good
TV.
choice. Good
Oh
choice.
yeah.
Who had you the most starstruck on set?
That's a good one. You know who I think most was Kathy Bates. Um, I worked on this show Disjointed on Netflix for
Mm,
a little bit, short-lived series, but Kathy Bates was and is as nice as you would hope, but
mm.
was is such a powerful force. You're like, wow. So
Yeah.
she makes you feel that starstruck.
If you could guest star on any TV show, what would you choose?
Well, for a while it was always Veep. I always
Mm.
wanted to be on Veep. That's not really an option right now, though. They're going to reboot it in a year now, right? They reboot everything.
And lastly, describe your most memorable audition in 3 words. And memorable can be good or bad, so that is entirely up to you.
3 words. Okay. I had. This is going to be 4 words. I had to dance, and the hint
Uh,
is it was a bad audition experience.
So John, obviously no two actors' journeys are alike, especially with our show. We've actually just today released our 100th episode. So lots of conversations that we've had, and no, definitely no two actors' paths are alike. So how did everything get started for you as an actor? Did it come a little bit early on in life, or was it something you discovered later?
It did start very early for me, actually, but it was always sort of like a pipe dream, I thought.
Mm,
But I was recently home in Virginia, where I grew up, and was cleaning out boxes in the basement for my parents, and I came across some writings that I'd done from when I was in like elementary school, and I had forgotten this, but I wrote in there that I wanted to be an actor.
mm,
That was the first thing I wanted to be. I didn't even, but I didn't, I don't think I even knew what it was then. Um, and again, it was like childhood dreams. It didn't seem like a real thing, but I really did from a very young age. So I started the journey for me really started in middle school. I took an acting class, a drama class
mm,
at the school, and um, I really liked it. But the thing I loved the most is at the end, if we were good, the last 10 minutes of the class were reserved to do improv games.
mm.
And that was where I like fell in love with doing improv. And again, I didn't really think that was something you could really do much more besides in a class or for fun. But I kept following it and doing it. And um, I did it a little bit throughout high school. And then I got to college. I went to University of Michigan doing something totally different. I was I was set to be a classical trumpet performance major, And I did. I completed that degree. But all the while, I would be like sneaking off to go to the drama department, and I was putting up my own little shows in the black box theater, little sketch comedy shows and improv shows. And I drove down to Chicago one weekend and saw a Second City show,
Mm.
and I had that moment where I thought that I knew exactly what I wanted to do. Then I said that when I saw the Second City show, I said that is exactly what I want to do. And I did later. I graduated. I did my classical trumpet performance degree while doing all these other things on the side, and moved to Chicago and started taking classes. And I eventually worked my way up. I toured with Second City for a number of years, and then I joined the main stage and did that for a number of years, and found that you could actually do sketch comedy and improv as like a full-time job.
Mm.
Um, One of the only ones, I think, but I was lucky enough to be able to. I'm very grateful. And that sort of set everything off to get set up where so many people come through Second City in Chicago and watch the shows, and uh, help me get an agent and a manager and be set up for when I moved to Los Angeles.
And have you so far been able to put your trumpeting skills onto a set? Have any of your roles called for that? Yeah.
They have not. I remember there was talk at one time in the Second City show about, oh, you should play trumpet in the show. That would be great. And I thought like, oh, that might be interesting. And then I started to flash forward to what that would mean, where it's a sketch comedy show that we do um, 8 shows a week. And I started to imagine deep into the run of this show, 6 months in, of me having to get to the theater probably 15, 20 minutes before everyone else, warming up the trumpet in the cold weather in Chicago where it would freeze probably. And I started to realize that this would be a nightmare to do. So I ruled it out for that show. And it has not come up for anything for TV or film, though it's listed on my resume for special skills. So it's there. It just hasn't been utilized.
Yeah. And I'm curious if there's anything that comes to mind that you realized early on in your career that was completely untrue about the entertainment industry. 'Cause I know there's so many misconceptions out there that we're sort of brought up to think this is what things are like, and then once you're actually in the thick of it, you're like, that was a complete like sort of myth. But yeah,
Yes.
what comes to mind?
The one that comes to mind the most, that more in regards to TV and film and not as much the stage, which is probably what you're referring to anyway, but is that there's never, this is you can even say this and it doesn't seem to be a lesson that people know unless you go through it, is that there's never like one point where you will be comfortable.
Mm.
And that sounds like a negative thing. It's really not. It's just that you have this conception before that you will be safe, secure, and comfortable when fill in the blank. And that could be, I will be comfortable enough to buy a home, or I will be comfortable enough to um, maybe tell people that I'm in this position where I'm secure and safe, whatever it might be for you as an individual. But I think any actor will tell you that there is never any spot where you finally feel like I'm set and I'm settled. My feet are firmly on the ground. And the reason then that that's not a negative to me is that it just keeps you A, humbled, and B, incentivized to keep working. I have a friend who's quite a big actor. I won't name names, but he would never have to work again if he didn't want to. He's that safe and set,
Mm.
and yet I've never seen anyone that hustles more than him, because he wonders, well, what will happen if this thing goes away? What would happen if this show or this movie or whatever? And I respect it so much, and I also understand it, though I'm not nearly on the level that he is. I just know that you're never going to be in that spot where you're finally like, I've made it,
Mm.
and that's really okay.
I was gonna be like, is it Tom Cruise? Are you talking about Tom Cruise? um,
No, no, Tom Cruise feels secure.
but again, he just keeps making movies. He
Hustle's like
could retire, but
a great example. A
yeah.
great example. You never see anyone hustling as much as him.
That is something that comes up quite a bit, is sort of that feeling, because everyone's striving for that moment of I've made it, I've done it, I've reached the level I've always wanted to reach. But at the same time, if you think as an actor, every booking you get, there's always something more. You know, if you book that co-star, like, what, I wish I was a guest star. You're a guest star. I wish I was a series regular. So it's like, oh, why couldn't we make it to 5 seasons? Or, it's always something else that we're always reaching for, um, that all artists do. And it's, like you said, especially true for sort of TV and film, because with theater at least, it's almost always a limited run. So you sort of know there's an end to it, um, and it's not so much up in the air.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a very interesting point. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the first job I ever got in LA was a small part on Two Broke Girls.
Mm.
Um, and I was so excited and it was awesome. But I even remember sitting around with them and they were so nice. But the main actresses, Kat Dennings and Beth Bears, were sitting there and they were in this very secure job. I think you'll find a lot of people in entertainment will say, um, the multicam sitcom is one of those really desired jobs. Even
Mm.
if you think the format is like passe or anything, it is job security in a way that a lot of other shows do not have. The schedule, the pay, it's weirdly very set. And they were sitting around well into the success of the run, and we're talking about what if this goes away? What do we do next if this show goes off? And they were talking like, well, we figure something out. They were in one of the most secure spots you could be in, and they like anyone were still wondering, what if this goes away? What do we do next? Should we be
Mm.
freaking out?
It's also with the show and all of these conversations we've had with actors from all over. When I first started the podcast, it was the very height of the pandemic. It was almost 2 years ago to the date, and it was speaking with friends of mine who are actors, and other actors I've worked with, in some capacity. And now we're talking to folks who, like yourself, who are on multiple TV shows, who are recurring, and sort of the same issues, given the show's called Actors with Issues, the same issues are sort of there for everyone. uh and again, to your point, that it's sort of that never really goes away, whether you just booked your first co-star or you're a series regular. Because we've talked with a bunch of your co-stars, from Ghosts. We've had Brandon Scott Jones on the show recently, and Asher Grodman, and yeah, just those conversations are always so linked, that those like feelings as actors never go away. And like you said, in a way, it keeps everyone humble, and driven and motivated to keep going.
It does. It's weirdly a great. I mean, I think entertainment can often, or Hollywood specifically, can be the great equalizer, where you're going to have the same problems as someone who's leagues ahead of you or leagues maybe on their way up. Those they never go away, but it's like a almost like a rite of passage. I think you have to go
Mm.
through those things to understand it, to make you a better, a more well-adjusted, well-rounded performer and person, because you also may get to that spot where it really all is happening. And like you said, though, I mean, I think it's like when you're on the moon, it's just rocks, you know.
Wow, yeah.
So you have to be prepared for all of those circumstances, which is why I don't begrudge anyone who would drop out of this industry, because it is a trying place to be, and that's why I never want to complain about it ever, because I it's not like someone forced this upon me. I chose to do this. I know what
Mhm.
I signed up for, and you sign up for the highs and the lows,
Yeah.
and that is definitely not appealing for quite a few people.
And again, given the name of the show, Actors with Issues, lots has come to light, about issues or obstacles that actors have commonly faced. What's something that comes to mind as something that you have dealt with and learned to navigate, or maybe something you're still dealing with? We've had folks talk about like getting that first rep early on in your career, or things like mental health or staying creative, especially during the several lockdowns that we had, sort of just being stuck and not being able to do anything. But yeah, what comes to mind as something that you've been able to navigate?
Yeah, the one that comes to mind, and I see a lot of people talking about, and the way that this has changed, is the idea of the performer as needing to make your own content, keep creating your own content to keep going, and um, I feel like this idea came about within the last 10 years, specifically as like a big thing to, if you're an actor, don't just be sitting around, make your own opportunity. You probably heard that phrase a
Mm.
lot. And yet that has changed so much in the last 2 years. I would say 2 years, especially, because everyone makes their own content now. Everyone does a really good job too. Um, the the best camera you have is in your home on your phone. You don't need equipment. You can have rudimentary skills as an editor. Everyone can make their own content, and people that aren't in the industry can nail it. Like people who are in it cannot. This very specific format being, you know, let's say like a TikTok presence, or what was very big during the pandemic is like that front facing comedy that people do to camera
Mm.
on Instagram or TikTok or wherever. And so then there's a moment where you go, okay, I'm being outrun by all these other people that are doing this thing very well. And so that idea has really, I think it trips you up a little bit because, like anything, nothing stays the same for very long. So who knows what that will look like in another year, if people are still doing that same kind of thing, if it's as desired. But I thought about it a lot recently, especially when you're cooped up and you're sitting around or you're in a lockdown, like you said, about the idea of creating your own opportunity is so um, it's so the method of doing that is very fleeting and transient almost, in that it keeps changing. The bar keeps getting moved. The goalposts are shifted every few months, or it seems, about how you do that. Um, you know, it's the equivalent I would use from when I was growing up is like a funny thing happens in the news and you get to see it that night on the Tonight Show. It's in the opening monologue.
Mm.
Now, something funny happens. The hot take or the first take is out within 10 minutes. And I think you're lucky if you have like the 10th take on it by that evening's Tonight Show.
Yeah.
Um, and so that is a tricky part of the business, if you are, especially if you're a content creator, and what that means for it going forward.
Yeah, that's definitely been something that's changed a lot. Because before folks would say create your content, it was like write a 6 episode web series for YouTube, or write or do a short film. And now it's like this sort of constant bite-sized content. And yeah, it's just that's definitely something that has come up a lot too, because a lot of the folks we've interviewed have created their own short films that have gone into festivals or their own web series, and they're pitching it to networks for all of that, and it comes up a lot. And just this sort of bite-sized social media content is just continuing to grow. But like you said, a lot of this that like what was the other, Vine? Do you remember Vine?
Oh
Like
yeah, of course.
that launched
R.I.P.
like so many careers, right? And then RIP, it goes away, and folks have to adapt. Once Vine went down, a lot of people are like, now what? Do I go to YouTube? Do I do, like, just trying to think what's the next platform, what's the next type of content
Yeah,
to make, and
the
it's
web series
always
is a
having to
great
adjust.
example.
Mm.
That I remember that being everyone needs, you need to make your web series. Like there were plenty of companies. I did one as well. I remember these companies that would pay you to make web series, and I none of them knew their own business model. Like it's like, how do you make money from a web series? A lot of them didn't know. They're playing catch up as they went. Everyone was kind of making it up as they went along, and you just don't see those around anymore. Like they either didn't survive or they transitioned to something else. Um, and now, if you put out a web series, you'd be hard pressed to make sure people knew where to find it,
Mhm.
and how to see it, and even just get any traction on it, because the game has changed. It's really the Wild West.
So before we wrap up, we always end with a game called Now That We Know You. So it's a non-rapid fire round of questions. So firstly, fill in the blank. If I weren't working in the arts, I'd be.
I'd be a chef.
Me too, and that's a very common answer.
Really? I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I, I'm not good enough to be one, but if I wasn't in it, I would work hard to become a good one.
Mm. Who would you trade places with for one day?
Malia Obama. I just want to see what it's like if you're Obama's one of the Obama's kids. That seems
Right.
fun.
What's that
And then
day
I could hang
like?
out with I'd hang out with Sasha. I'm not saying I'd pick. It doesn't need to be. It could be Sasha, but I'm picking Malia. I think she's got. I'd like to see what it's like.
Hmm. What's the best advice you've ever gotten?
The best advice I've ever gotten. Um, I'm going to say I keep. This is a tangent, but I keep little like notes to myself, like hidden around my apartment, so that I'm not looking for them. But every once in a while, um, I will stumble upon them. I will forget that I have hidden them somewhere,
Mm,
and they're a little bit new agey, like uh, little mantras or nice things. And the best advice, and one I just stumbled upon the other day that made me think of this, and I think it is probably some of the best advice I've ever received is keep showing up.
mm.
Um, I mean, sort of in line with everything we've been talking about, but the moment you're feeling like I cannot do this. This is for in whatever regard that is, career, personal life, whatever. Keep showing up.
Mm.
It's like the least. It's just like that little push to like keep you going. And if you keep showing up, then things will happen inevitably in some way.
Yeah, because so many folks, because just showing up is just like the simple thing of you just being there. And that's like step one. That's the first step to being like, I'm here.
Yeah,
Now what's the next step? And you just keep doing that sort of step forward. Yeah, I love that.
I think the opposite would be. I think the opposite of showing up is giving up. So,
Mm,
and that's such a huge thing to do, but it's so easy at the same time. But showing up is a small thing, but a very significant one.
mm. And what's the worst advice you've ever gotten?
Um, the worst advice, it would have to be something. That's a good one because people offer bad advice all the time.
Mhm. Often
Oh,
unsolicited, I'm sure.
it is, and I often find a bad advice is offered in such a nice package because everyone means well.
Right.
Everyone means well, and everyone's got an opinion. Everyone knows what's best for you, and the I would say in that regard, it is um, for me personally in entertainment. The bad advice would be look at what everyone is doing and do that. Like
Mm,
follow the marketplace for what's successful. That is that is not good advice. It may be for a hot second, but if you're chasing trends, that trend is going to be over so fast, and you also just don't. You will not grow, um,
mm.
and you will not make the thing you want to make if you think you're making the thing that you are supposed to be making. That never turns out well. There's a great David Bowie thing about making art where if you're in a swimming pool that your feet are not on the ground. I think I did too many double negatives in there. I meant like you should never be too comfortable, so you should always be in the deep end where you can't touch.
Mm. And lastly, in 10 words or less, what advice would you give to a young actor?
Okay, so to sort of summarize in a way things we've been talking about,
Mm,
10 words or less. Do it for yourself until you don't want to anymore.
awesome. Love it. John, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. For anyone that wants to give you a follow on Instagram or social media, where can they find you?
Yes, I'm not on Twitter, and I'm pretty happy about it. Um, but
Good
I
choice.
but I am on Instagram, and I'm at John L Hartman on Instagram.
Awesome. And you can all follow us on Instagram at Actors with Issues. Give me a follow at Juan Ayala Official and check out all of our full video interviews at youtube.com/Actors with Issues podcast or listen on the go wherever you get your podcasts every Monday. And you can see John Hartman throughout the first season of CBS Comedy Ghosts on Paramount Plus. And hope to see more of you in season two, obviously, because that just got renewed. So that's awesome.
Yes, me
And
too. I'm excited.
I'm Juan Ayala. This is Actors with Issues, and we'll see you next week.